Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Audacity Academy. I am your host, Sarah Falciani, of course. And here we are with interview number 3. And I'm having so much fun with this. I can't even get enough. So I don't even know if you'll ever hear just from me again, because I love bringing you high value content from guests every week. And this episode is going to be no different. So today I have with us mental health and wellness coach and fellow self-help junkie. We actually went through a coaching program together, Kate Arredondo, and she's also a recently published author. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to her to tell us all about herself, why she does what she does, who she is, and about this new book that just came out.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. I am so happy to be here and with your listeners. And I am Kate Arredondo. Like Sarah said, I'm a mental wellness coach, recently published author. I just published my book, Finding the Alpenglow. It's my journey, really, the story. It's kind of memoir meets self-help. But my perspective on being bipolar and navigating the illness, really, the book is about the last 5 years, 6 years almost now, where I got pregnant, had a baby, had to get off my medication, was fine. I was stable. Everything was great, right? Until all the pregnancy hormones kind of went away. And then I didn't really have a game plan for what am I going to do after the pregnancy hormones aren't helping kind of keep me stable. And so that's kind of where my self-help journey really started, and heard about life coaching on a podcast and kind of just was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. So I left corporate accounting and embarked on coaching and starting my coaching, helping others with their mental wellness, with their mental health, really learning to find that long-term stability and happiness with or without medication, but really helping them like understand and not allow it to limit themselves, and learn to thrive. So that's kind of what my book is about, my perspective, what worked for me, what I think will work for other people. But I also did some research in talking with other doctors and whatnot, finding stuff that really I think can really help people. But I'm no expert, but I lived it and I'm on the other side of it. And so I really felt inspired to help others with that part of their journey as well. But nature lover, I have a daughter, and I'm currently pregnant with baby number 2. So that's exciting.
Congratulations. That is so exciting.
And yeah, you normally catch me not during the week. On the weekends, we're camping a lot. We bought our RV when COVID started, and we kind of just go all over Texas and spend as much time outdoors as we can. So that's really who I am and what I love and who I want to help, and a little bit about my book.
What an absolutely amazing story, and scary. Did you feel like you were prepared during your first pregnancy for kind of what was going to happen, being off of your medication and the hormones and everything? Did anyone prepare you for that?
A little bit. Like, before I even thought, okay, like, is this even possible? Because I had gone through phases where I was on multiple medications, but I had gotten to a point over like a 10-year process, really, where I was just on a mood stabilizer. And I have to give a lot of credit to my psychiatrist, because I feel like she's very in the forefront of helping her patients use as the least amount of medication as possible and still keep their stability. And so she had worked with me already to kind of get off the other medications, and then to even taper down on my mood stabilizer to kind of find like what's the lowest dose that you can be on that keeps you steady. Because as many people who have been on mental medication will tell you, it's not fun, I mean,
Nope.
it is, you feel like a zombie, you kind of lose who you are. my mood stabilizers would make me extremely tired. So I was always sleepy and groggy. And I tried them all. Trust me, I went through a phase. I was rebellious. I got stable after kind of struggling with the illness for several years. And I'm like, oh, I'm good. Like everything's fine. I don't need medication. And I did the whole go off your medication, don't tell anyone. And it was a disaster. And then trying to kind of get stability back, we tried all the different things, right? And so I've been through all the generations of the psychotropic drugs to kind of help you with mood stabilization. And yeah, so I did go back to the drug she originally started me on and was able to taper down. And so before I knew I wanted to kind of start a family, I went to her with my husband and had a conversation like, is this even possible? Because I knew the drug I was on has risks for abnormalities potentially with the fetus. And I also give her so much credit because she's like, oh yeah, you can totally do this. I know you, like, you got this. Like pregnancy hormones are going to help you because the body is going to do everything it can to protect the baby. Like that's just nature. And it includes your mental health. And so you're going to have all these hormones and they're going to do everything it can to keep you stable. And then, like you'll be fine. And so I went through a 6-month process of tapering completely off my medication. And it was funny because only my husband knew. I didn't let anyone else know. Only he knew that I was going through it. And after like my family found out that I was pregnant, they were all kind of shocked because they knew my situation. And, they're like, were you still on medication? I'm like, no, I've tapered off. And they're like, wow, we haven't noticed anything. I'm like, yeah, because I feel great. And I was also fortunate that we did get pregnant pretty quickly after getting off. So I didn't have a long lapse. But after being pregnant and then I, breastfed and you still get those benefits, right? And so she was a little over a year old and I'm driving to work one day and I don't even remember like the thought spiral that started, but there was a thought spiral and my anxiety was just up and up and up. And I think it really was the feeling that like, what am I doing? Not so much in my personal life, because I felt fulfilled being a parent and I felt fulfilled in my marriage and in my relationship, but like, what am I actually here for? It was kind of like that big, what is my purpose kind of moment. And I think that's what really spiraled me. And I had a panic attack while driving and I hadn't had one in a good amount of time. And so that's really like what got me to the point of, okay, well, I got to do something. Realizing I didn't have a plan, and I'm such a planner, but I didn't have a plan for like how to live life unmedicated with this disorder that I, struggled off and on with. And so, I talked to my doctor and I told her, I feel like I don't want to go on medication. I've seen what it feels like to be off and to finally feel like I'm me. And I don't want to go back. And she was very open to helping me kind of figure out what that looked like without medication, with the disclaimer, like, it may not work. So that's when I really focused on meditation. She is trained in MBSR therapy, and she told me a lot of the benefits of meditation and mindfulness. And I think it was really understanding how the mind worked and like what was happening in my brain that really like unlocked it for me to being able to move from that, like I'm a victim to my illness, to where I actually felt like, okay, maybe I can actually run the show, like there's the mind and the brain and they aren't the same thing. And I know a lot of people like mental illness is like something you're going to have for the rest of your life. And I'm totally there. It's not to say I don't have my moments and that I haven't gone through like depression and what since, but I have been able to not let it consume me, if that
Mhm.
makes sense, and not let it take me down. And I can still kind of keep forwarding the action and what I want to do and moving with my life, but realizing and doing things to help me manage during those times. And it's really boundary setting for me. So it was really discovering like, hey, there's these tools, meditation, mindfulness, and really like I found a lot of music as kind of therapeutic
Mhm.
for me, and really just understanding like, okay, so what's happening right in my mind, and how can I kind of lasso
Mhm.
my thoughts and my brain to where I can actually move through this without the assistance of medication. So that was kind of where it's all started.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. We might need the name of that doctor. I'm sure there are plenty of, she sounds amazing.
I know, and I love her. She does primarily deal with child psychiatry, and so when I was struggling when I was, an adolescent,
Mhm.
but she does keep people honest into adulthood. And I know she's willing to really work with women.
Mhm.
But yes, Michelle Hauser, she's in Austin. If anything, she has that MBSR program still. Sorry, MBCT, actually,
Mhm.
Austin is her
Okay.
company. And she hosts that on the quarters pretty regularly. And, that's a really good way for people to kind of take a deep dive into mindfulness and meditation at a real high therapeutic level. And I'm actually starting next week an MBSR program with an outside university because of the research I found in my book, and
Mhm.
really understanding how tools like that can really, really help you become able to really manage the mind.
Absolutely. So yes, I'm going to have you email her information to me, and I'm going to drop it
Okay.
in the links below so that anybody
Okay.
because I'm sure there are going to be local people who are like,
Yes.
I need her now. And it
I
is so
know.
rare. I a little bit about my story as well, and having had my own experiences with mental health and worked with so many psychiatrists and psychologists over the years. It is
Mhm.
so rare to find someone who, one, listens to the patient and is on board with, okay, you want to do this without medication? Cool. We're going to figure out a way to do this without medication. So that's amazing you were able to find that.
Yeah, it's so true, Sarah. I went through the gamut of psychiatrists, psychologists. I was misdiagnosed for years, put on
Mhm.
one medication, which caused me to spiral cycle, more. And it's so true. And I talk about that in the book, like the importance of continuing until you find that person, because they're out there. And I think there's really more of them now. I really think there's a lot of focus now more in like patient versus even a decade ago or 20 years ago. And there's a lot of new new tools that they're starting to, like EMDR therapy and
Mhm.
stuff like that just seems really innovative. And what really inspired me in coaching too as well, and working in the mental health space, is the book The Body Keeps the Score. I don't know if you've read it, but
Mm-mm.
he's a huge proponent, and he's world renowned psychiatrist in helping people move through their trauma, because his theory is that trauma is kind of what creates all mental illness
Mhm.
in one way, shape, or form, and how the power of EMDR therapy can really help people, basically their brain process their trauma in a different
Mhm.
way, and then they're kind of able to live their life. It kind of recircuits how the brain processes that trauma.
Mhm.
But he talks a lot about the fight that he feels with like big pharma and insurance companies. And he's a huge proponent in medication was designed to kind of help people through
Mhm.
their depression or their moments, right, of darkness or despair.
Mhm.
But then as a therapist, their responsibility is to help people move away from that, so get
To
them
develop
through.
tools. Yes.
Right.
It's
Get
a
them
two-part.
through. Exactly. And he talks about like that just hasn't been happening. And that's how it was designed originally, the process of mental health, mental illness in that space. And it was just really eye-opening because he has a ton of research. And it's like, yes, like I'm so happy to see so many therapists nowadays moving towards EMDR and actually treating like the cause of a lot of people's illness. So it'd be interesting to see really as that grows, kind of how the mental health space kind of shifts.
Now you work in the mental health space, but you're a coach. What made you choose coaching versus going back to school and doing psychiatry or becoming a talk therapist?
Yes, I'm glad you asked because I did have that kind of thought process. The thing about coaching for me was I love the fact that as a coach, it is taking someone who is like coping, right? Or stable, you could say, and helping them grow, helping them thrive, like taking them to the next level. And that's what really, really intrigued me because I just felt like that's where I was at that point. Like I had been coping for years and years and years, and I was living life, right? I had a family, I had a marriage, stable job, all the things, but it wasn't fulfilling for me. Like there was something missing. And I just feel like a lot of people with mental health struggles or mental illness, like when you're told you have something that's lifelong that you're going to struggle with, you kind of take it as, in a way, kind of like a lifelong sentence, right? You're going to be shackled to this illness. And that was the biggest turning point for me, is when I'm like, I'm not going to be defined by bipolar disorder. Like I refuse. And it took me a while to get there. But I think the biggest thing was I made a promise to myself that I was never going to let myself fall back into the deep, dark hole that I had dug myself out of when I stopped taking my medication initially, because that was the darkest part of my life. And even though I have like a lot of disassociation with that time period, I still like understand how bad it really got, and how close I was to not being here. You know, I kind of opened my book talking about how I got to this point. And in writing the book, Sarah, I hadn't shared really with anyone except for my psychiatrist, my suicide attempt. And so I kind of glazed over it in my first like manuscript submission. And you know, they kind of like, well, I think you need to like share that story. And it's like, you don't realize I haven't told anybody. Like I gotta call my mom. Like, you know, but that was the thing about coaching, like helping people go from coping to thriving, and really helping them like find that fire that I found, and that joy in knowing that like your life is however you want to make it. It really is. And we're no longer going to kind of listen to the old school kind of psychiatry that you just got to be on drugs for the rest of your life, or you're not going to be stable for the rest of your life. That being said, I 100% believe in psychiatry, you know, talk therapy. I went through cognitive behavioral therapy. You know, I feel that they have a place, but I see this vision from The Body Keeps the Score of there's life after your diagnosis. There's life after the depression. And if I can help people achieve that, and even if that's in partnership with their therapist, obviously, like if they want to make the choice to reduce medication, that's going to be completely on the therapy side of things. But what can I do as a coach? What can we kind of talk about and make a goal, make a plan for that to happen and for it to go as smooth as possible? Like I like to think about my mental health before kind of my epiphany with self-care and life coaching. Like I was on this huge roller coaster ride at the theme park, like the biggest, the scariest, the fastest one. You never know, like you're in the dark. You never know when you're about to go through a loop or plunge down or whatever it is, right? And with the help of coaching and finding that stability, now it's like I'm on the kiddie roller coaster. Like life is going to be up and down, but it doesn't have to be these huge dramatic swings. And so that really is what attracted me to coaching.
I love that analogy of the roller coaster. I hope everyone takes that and applies that to their life, because that's brilliant. If you feel like you're on like the biggest and scariest roller coaster, know that you have the choice to step off that and you can step on the kiddie one. And there's no shame in wanting your life. There's no shame in wanting your life to be like the kiddie roller coaster.
Exactly. Yes. It's so funny because when I first kind of thought about that, I was like, that's so like how I feel, but I'm able, and trust me, I'm a thrill seeker. Like I love an adrenaline rush just as much as the next person. But that when you're on that roller coaster for years or for decades, really,
That's exhausting.
It's exhausting. Yes. So let's get on the kiddie roller coaster and to have fun and be able to kind of keep going on roller coaster rides instead of kind of getting whiplash.
Absolutely. I love that. So how do you feel boundaries served you on your journey with your mental health? Where did it start for you? When did you start thinking about boundaries as it applies to this area?
Yeah, it really started with like myself, right? In boundaries with myself first, because I had to obviously be able to get the skills like through self-awareness, self-reflection that comes with meditation, mindfulness, and like understanding like a thought's happening, right? Like how is it serving me, or am I spiraling myself into anxiety or into kind of like depression or whatnot. So really the first boundary was with my own mind, right? The separation between my brain and what it is chemically trying to do in my mind, and that they're separate and I have control. So that was really like the first boundary. It was with myself of, okay, like brain, you're not taking the reins anymore, like I am. And also I think the second boundary really was like the self-care piece of my journey, because at the time I was so devoted to my job and so much of my energy went into work, and I allowed my job and my career to really define me as my worth and my success. And I had to stop and be like, it's sucking my soul, right? It's stealing my joy. And so putting that boundary in place with it's me over anything else. And I know people may struggle with that, especially like mothers, parents and whatnot, but I can't be there for her and I can't be there for my marriage if I'm not there for myself first. And another boundary for me was really allowing myself to have me time. I never would go and like do things just by myself, especially like once you get married, you're always going and doing things together. And, occasionally my husband's a huge fisherman. He's great about me time and I was fine with it, but I'm more like introverted. Like I love to stay at home and I'd rather just kind of like chill, but that wasn't really serving me. And that really kind of would keep me in a lower vibration, right? And so I really had to start doing things and pushing myself to go outdoors or go on like just a little like trip to the like go shopping by myself or do stuff for myself. And at first, I felt like, oh, I feel selfish, right? And through actually working with my coach, I was able to really like understand, no, it's not selfish. Like it's a necessity. Like I was not serving anybody in my best possible way when I was not actually doing things for myself. And for me, really now, what that looks like is I still go out and do things. Like I did a weekend camping trip by myself,
Oh, wow.
um, and so that was great, and it was so like freeing and just liberating. But really for me too, it's my like time in the mornings, right? Like after the kiddos at school and my husband's gone to his job and I'm here working from the house, it's my morning routine.
Mhm.
And I call it in my book, I kind of found like my personal happiness recipe. It's kind of like what I have to do to keep myself like thriving, right? And grounded.
Mhm.
And um, the one piece that I really had to learn about that though was that for me, that means balance in like mind, body, and spirit kind of practices, right? And so I've always kind of been a big runner. I was very athletic, like in high school. And so for me, like it's movement, right? Got to do
Mhm.
yoga. I got to go for a walk, go for a run, like get outside, do something, move my body. And then also like the mind piece, like whether that's meditation or whether that's kind of like when I'm out running, like being mindful, those kinds of things. Or a lot of times I'll listen to like podcasts or, audiobooks that are kind of helping me grow self-growth, right,
Mhm.
as a person. And so it was that balance of like, I have this personal happiness recipe, but unless it's got like all the components of my body and spirit,
Mhm.
then I'm not at my ultimate, I can't live my ideal day, right?
Mhm.
Every day. And so I think that rounded approach was a missing link for me because sometimes I would be hyper focused on one part of it. I
Mhm.
like to train for like half marathons, and I actually ran my first marathon in February. And
Congratulations again.
thank
You're
you.
just killing it this year. Published a book, ran your
Oh,
first marathon, pregnant with baby number 2. Look at
I
you go.
know. Oh my gosh. And I'll tell you, like, I ran that marathon at 11 weeks pregnant, and
Oh.
I do not recommend it for anyone, because I've really struggled more this pregnancy with morning sickness than the first one. And
Oh
I was
no.
literally in bed like all day Thursday, down for the count, like nauseous and just not good. And Friday was mostly that. And Saturday, I'm like trying to carb up and like really hydrate and
Hydrate.
rally myself. And Sunday morning, I wake up, and that, of course, the adrenaline was like just pumping through my veins, and
Mhm.
I felt good. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this shit. Like it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm doing this shit. Damn it, we're running a marathon
Yep.
today,
Just tell the baby, you got to calm it down. We got to get
Yes.
through this marathon.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. And I did like a boundary I set with myself is I threw my time, like what I wanted to do my
Mhm.
marathon in, I threw that out the window. Like I was not going
Yeah.
to, that was not going to be a thing for me. And
Perfect.
I'm highly competitive by
Mhm.
nature. And I'm like, no, like time means nothing. I
Mhm.
just want to finish the marathon and finish the marathon like feeling
Yes.
good. Like
Uh-huh.
that's it. And that's what I did. But to be honest, like for the first 18 miles of the marathon, I was on point for that record, and I was just kind of shocked because I had no idea that I would even be able to like, because my times had slowed down once I did get pregnant in
Mhm.
my practice running. So, anyways, it was just like, it's just amazing kind of like what you can do. And I felt good, honestly, the whole race.
Mhm.
Of course, the last few miles are like not fun, right?
Mhm.
Everything's tired and aching. And but I felt good. And I think it was not just physically good, but just all around like spiritually good and just happy with the journey, right?
Mhm.
And crossing that finish line, was it was really big for me. But yes,
So do you
like
feel like you're sorry to interrupt. I just
no,
wanted you mentioned how when you crossed the finish line, you felt like all the pieces were there, like the mental, the spiritual, and the physical kind of came together in that moment. And I'd like to
yes,
just unpack that a little bit. Do you
yeah.
think if when you were preparing for this marathon, your approach to that mind, body, spirit, personal happiness recipe that you have, do you think that contributed to your being able to make it through the marathon?
Yes, I really do, because I didn't a lot of times, and in my previous half marathons, like you hit that wall, right? You get to a certain point where you're just like, why am I doing this? I still have X amount of miles. Like, I just want to stop. And I didn't feel that. And I really like kept kind of tuning into my body, right? The whole marathon, and like, okay, how am I feeling? Like, how do I feel as far as I've had some previous injuries, right? Like, and really like focusing on those areas of my body and really tuning in. And that's something I had done while training, trying to be like more mindful, right? And even when I was running, really trying to take in the moment instead of just focusing on the next step and the next step, like seeing the people around me and like using the energy from the crowd to really kind of like keep me going and keep me pumped up, and listening to my music that kind of keeps me at that like high vibration. And so yes, I definitely think like the training, and because I started training for the marathon like literally Monday after I quit corporate America. So it was kind of like my transition to the next chapter in my life was training for this run and completing the marathon. And I really do think that that was like metaphorically kind of what really helped me get through the marathon on that day, despite everything going on.
What an absolute rock star. I'm just loving this conversation so much. You mentioned while you were running I love this question too. Remember your why. Like, why am I here? Do you think in that moment in the marathon, with your journey with your mental health and getting off medication and then having the ups and downs, how important to you personally is knowing and embracing your why?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. It's like the core of my like energy. It is really, it's like finding that purpose and really feeling like I'm actually contributing to the world finally, and helping others. And even like during training, like when I wanted to like, okay, like I don't know if I can run today. I don't want to run today. I feel bad. Like going back to the purpose in me running the marathon, or even in coaching, right? Like really kind of getting the coaching program going. Like that was when I find myself in lower level energy, I always stop and be like, but I'm doing this because, right? And thinking about like that reason of why when I heard about life coaching, it was like an epiphany for me. And the same thing of like why I want to help my clients do what I want to help them do. It reignites that fire every single time. So it's huge as far as just kind of keeping the momentum, keeping the energy, and reconnecting to that purpose.
Amazing. And do you work with your clients? I'm assuming one of the first things you dig into with your clients is establishing a why.
Yes, exactly. And like what is their kind of like personal happiness plan, right? Like what are they doing as far as taking care of themselves? But yes, it all goes back to really like that self-image, Sarah, like the why. And do you think that you deserve to live a normal life despite being diagnosed with, this illness or going through these lower points in your life? Like, do you feel like you deserve it? Because that has to be there, right? That commitment and that feeling like I can do this before you can really kind of focus on actually doing the work, right? So yes, it's huge.
Absolutely.
The self-image, the why.
And also set a boundary. I love this lesson from my therapist. And I don't know if your therapist or psychiatrist has ever said this to you, but when I was I've been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorder. an adjustment disorder. Those are like the big things that I've been diagnosed with at various times. And I've been misdiagnosed. Right. They've had all these different things in there, but those are the things I've been diagnosed with. And I remember being in session with my therapist once and feeling just crying. I was overwhelmed and I felt like these things defined me and like I had to make certain choices in my life because I had these diagnoses. And she just like very calmly looked at me and was like, they're not your identity though. A diagnosis is not like a script for who you have to be in your life. Your diagnosis is simply information for you to use so you understand yourself better and you're able to work with yourself instead of feeling. It's just information. Just at diagnosis as an information for you to learn how to work with yourself was like that was a game changer for me.
Yeah.
Did you have a similar moment like that in your own journey?
Oh yeah, completely. And, I think for me, it's like my resistance to medication with my psychiatrist. She kind of told me like a similar thing because she was like, if I told you were diabetic, like type 1 diabetic, and you needed insulin because your body's not producing it, would you take the insulin? And I'm like, well, of course, and she's like, if I told you had a major heart condition and you had to take this drug because your heart might stop, would you take the drug? And I'm like, well, of course. And she's like, well, why would you not think that the brain is exactly like the heart or your pancreas? They're the same thing. Like it's an organ. It's going to have issues come up. And for anyone to not think that that is the case, like that's the big problem with the stigma, right? Around mental illness and mental health, like that the brain is supposed to be this like perfect thing.
Yeah.
And it's not. But yes, like I start off my book talking about like bipolar disorder no longer defines me. And that was my big thing, that I felt like, oh, I'm bipolar. Therefore, like you said, I'm not going to be able to live this happy, joyful life. I'm not going to be able to have a family. I'm not going to be able to, like your mind just starts telling you all these things you can't do. And the power is in realizing, no, I can do it. And I think the same thing, like when I really figured out that I was an empath, I had no clue, like that other people didn't feel the way I felt. And really, once I figured out that I was an empath, it made so much of my mental illness and my mental health actually make sense because I've been diagnosed with like social anxiety disorder. And I always thought like, oh, it's my social anxiety disorder, why I hate walking into big groups. And I'm like always quiet when I meet new people. And if I walk into a room, there's a bunch of people, like, I just want to go to a corner and just kind of stand there and take it all in. And like, that has nothing to do with social anxiety disorder. Like it's my empath and I didn't know. And I like, all these things are coming at me and I didn't know like how to actually like process it and protect myself from it. And so I think of it like the same way of like finding out that I was an empath and like that not everybody feels this way. I'm like, oh, well, no wonder, you know?
And then when you have information, like understanding that you're an empath or having a diagnosis from a medical doctor, whether it's psychiatry or physical, information puts you in a position where now you can go, okay, this is the scenario. This is the information I have. What can I do about it? What is actually within my control? What is outside of my control? And that is really when you can start using the tool of boundaries to make your life better. Like an example of a boundary would be like someone hearing your diagnosis and projecting their own understanding of it and their own limiting beliefs on it onto you. You get to go, no, your definition of this, your definition of me, I'm not allowing that. I have my definition of me. I have my understanding of what this diagnosis means to me and what I want to make of my life. And I think it's so valuable for my listeners to remember that you have that power. You have that power. Your diagnosis does not have to define you. Being an empath does not have to define you. And other people's definition of these things doesn't have to define you either. You get to write the rules. Of course, in the medical journals and DSM-5 or 6, whatever we're up to now, there's the information that arms doctors to be able to make a diagnosis, but you get to interpret it and decide what it means for you in your life.
Exactly.
And if there's one thing we're learning from listening to Kate and having this conversation today, it is that you can make your life whatever you want it to be. You can still have a family. You can still run a marathon. You can still write a book. You can still change your career, leave corporate America, start your own business. It's just, oh my God, we've learned so much today. I wish we could talk forever. Thank you so much for being on here today with us, Kate. We're going to wrap up here in the next couple of minutes. Tell all the people the name of your book one more time, and where they can best follow you, whether it's a website or a social media channel.
Yeah. So my book is Finding the Alpenglow. It's available like on Amazon, primarily, but actually it's available on Walmart and Target through various kind of retailers and whatnot.
Yay, that's awesome. Is it an audio book yet, or is it still?
No, it's either the ebook or the paperback for now. Okay. I'm hoping to kind of be able to get the audio version out there. And then I have my website that's about to launch, findingthealpenglow.com. But for right now, Facebook and Instagram are where I'm normally at Alpenglow Coaching, and Alpenglow, ALPENGLOW. A lot of people have never heard that word. I think it's a beautiful word because of what it stands for. But
what does it stand for?
It actually is like when you're looking at a sunset, right? And it's all the pretty colors and the sun's setting. But right after the sun sets, if you actually like turn around and there's clouds in the sky, you'll see them kind of still lit up, even though the sun's gone down, or right before sunrise, it happens too. And they're kind of these pink and purple and bluish kind of hues in the clouds, but especially on mountains. So right before the sunrise or right after the sun sets on a mountain, that kind of like rosy, huey glow is an alpenglow. And it's just real special to me. And now, of course, I see it all the time, like in the evenings in the clouds. And I'm a big mountain person, even though I live in Texas, but my heart is in Colorado. But I just think it's such a beautiful word for something in nature that people really don't know about.
I didn't know the meaning of it. I had never actually heard the word until I saw when your book came out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing what that means. I think it's a beautiful metaphor as well for your journey, for the journey of life in general, really.
Yes.
Finding that silver lining, finding that color in the clouds.
Right. And then the last thing that I will be having is I'm launching a community on Mighty Networks called Finding the Alpenglow. And that's really going to be like a space for my clients or just anyone interested in mental health and wellness to have it's kind of subscription based. Therefore, people can get on there and it can be like a private group to share their wins and what helps with their mental health and wellness, and have like monthly group meetings, and really be able for me to share what I've learned in the research, right? Like from my book, so that others can really learn to thrive with their mental illness and with their mental health. And so I'm real excited about that, because I think that's a big thing with mental illness and mental health is like a lot of people don't have that support, right? And I want that to be a safe community where people can talk and share like what's working and with others in an environment, right, where everyone's on the same page and everyone understands you and what you're going through.
Absolutely. And when does that launch?
So I'm hoping to have that launched here actually at the start of April. Beautiful. So I'm real excited about that. So coming very soon.
Amazing. And I will go ahead and drop all those links below, guys, as you know, so that you can go ahead and connect with Kate and stay tuned for that community as it launches. And the last thing as we wrap up, Kate, please share with the humans one lesson, one piece of advice. If you could say one thing to someone right now, what is your intuition saying?
The biggest thing for me is like, you are worth it. And and like that you choose to live like the life that you have always dreamed to live. Because I know how often how a lot of people have been so close to that not being their reality. So that everybody's worth it, and choose to live that life that you've always dreamed.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you, listeners, for
Yes.
joining us and for being a part of our world. We love you so much. Thank you, Kate. We will see everyone next time.
Thanks, Sarah.